All right, so we're going to keep it tight tonight. Here's the issue. Mueller has Manafort at the nexus of two troubling coincidences. He alleges Manafort was meeting with Russians about taming U.S. policy in Ukraine. At the same time, he was running the Trump campaign, and at the same time, the party was softening its platform on helping Ukraine. The second, that the same faces and places being targeted by the campaign were targeted by Russian trolls. Is that thanks to Manafort giving poll data to bad guys? These questions come as the Senate considers the nomination of a new man to oversee the investigation, who says the findings should come out and that this is not a witch hunt. The special counsel still wants to question the president in person. His lawyers are standing in his way. And again, we have one tonight, the main man, Rudy Giuliani. Good to have you on Primetime. Thank you for doing it.
How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
First, let's do some housekeeping. Have you been speaking, interchanging with the Mueller team? Is there any news about whether or not the president will answer more questions?
We told them 6 weeks ago that we would not take any more questions. That was at the time we found out a lot of very disturbing things about how they've conducted themselves, including one today that's devastating to Mueller. And basically, you know, destroying the struck 19,000 texts that were all done during the period of time of the Mueller investigation. Every single one of his text messages has been destroyed by Mueller's people.
Well, just to get the facts straight, Mr. Mayor, you said something I don't think you meant it. They recovered 19,000 texts from Strzok and Page.
They've also not been able to recover almost an equal number. And the
But how do they know how many they couldn't recover?
Well, they were assuming. Actually, it's between 9 and 19,000, if you want to be specific. And we don't have those. And those are the ones that he would be texting to Page. The one he was texting things like, we have to prevent him from being president. Right. We have to have an insurance policy if he becomes president.
Right. Those all came out.
He's a disreputable, sick, insane man.
Right. They did not like Trump.
No, they didn't like Trump. They hated Trump.
Hate's your word, but clearly
no.
They didn't like him.
When you say that a man,
the Inspector General,
when
two
you
of
say
them
that
said it didn't affect their work.
Well, maybe if we had these, texts, we would find out it did affect their work, because we don't have the texts when he was working for Mueller. Mueller's people erased them, even knowing that they had this history. Well, you tell me what they would think of us if we did that. They knew that Strzok and Page had texted these inappropriate things.
Yes, and they removed them from the team because of them.
And that's the reason they should have retained the text.
Well, why? They already took action against them, and they had no reason to question the animus the way you are right now.
Well, of course
not at that time.
Of course they did. They read the text. The reason they were fired is because of his inappropriate texting.
Right.
Then you go erase the phone?
Well, that's their policy.
And you want me to accept that that was in good faith when you have a guy like Weissman working there?
But that's what the Inspector General said.
Well, the Inspector General actually didn't know at that point that these things had been removed.
No, but in the report, I just had the quote.
The Inspector General can be wrong, too. He's not God, you know.
Well, I know. You say that nobody is God. We all understand that. There's only one higher power. But what I'm saying, Mr. Mayor, is that they looked at it, they were concerned about it, and they revealed that there is a policy in place that when you surrender your phone, it is erased and given to somebody else.
Not if it's evidence of misconduct, you don't do that.
But they weren't looking at it that way, the way you are. They had already removed them.
Maybe they were so damn biased they weren't looking at it that way because they were involved in a witch hunt to get Trump from the very beginning. So today we find out in The Hill, John Solomon's article is devastating. I didn't see your report on that, Chris. That article says that from day one, we didn't know this yet, but from day one, they knew that the dossier was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC, $1.1 million, that it was a phony document.
They did not think it was a phony document.
Well, how about it put Cohen at places he wasn't? How about
it may have been wrong, but there were a lot of different memoranda in it that had different sourcing, and some of it was right, some of it wasn't.
There is not a single piece of that document that has been substantiated.
That's not true.
Strzok testified to that.
Strzok did not testify to that.
Lisa Page testified to that. She certainly did.
No,
she certainly did.
They were testifying, as I remember it, they were testifying on the idea that it was the sole premise of the investigation. You had nothing else. This is what your FISA application was. This is all you had. And they said that's not true.
Well, you know what it was? It was a completely fraudulent affidavit, because the affidavit fails to mention that the dossier on which the case was based, at least in part, whether it's whole or in part, that was a totally false statement. It did not say to the court that this was an Up research.
Well, that's not true also. There was a footnote
No,
about
the
where it was
footnote does not
from.
say, doesn't mention Hillary Clinton, doesn't mention the DNC. It says that a law firm,
right.
It says, quote, a law firm paid for this document.
As
doesn't
opposition research.
Doesn't
and there
say
were several, there
didn't
were several
say opposition.
Reviews. Not in the footnote.
No, it doesn't. Chris, let's be truthful. Let's be truthful, Donna.
Always.
Come on now.
Always.
Let's stop all this false reporting.
What
Let's
false
stop
reporting?
it once
What
and
have
for
I
all.
said that's false?
What you said is that they revealed it. They did not reveal it. They revealed something false. They said it was paid for by a law firm. Not that it was political op-ed research. Not that Hillary Clinton provided money for it. Not that the DNC provided money for it. That would make it highly suspect to anyone.
No, they said that it was paid for to get opposition research on a
political
political
they did not.
opponent.
No, they didn't. They said it was paid for by a law firm seeking information on Donald Trump. It did not say opposition research. Did not say it was paid for by Hillary Clinton. You don't think that's relevant, that it was paid for by Hillary Clinton?
I think it's relevant. That's why I'm having a discussion with you.
And they knew it at the time. They were briefed by Bruce Orr, who testified under oath. He's hardly a friend of Donald Trump's. Bruce Orr testified that he explained it to Andrew Weissman, one of Mueller's chief deputies, who has been cited for ethical misbehavior so often, it's disgraceful that he's working for the government and getting paid by the government. Should have been fired 10 years ago. When he screwed up the Enron case, when he screwed up the Arthur Anderson case, when he refused to provide documents exculpatory to people who were let out of jail.
I hear you on all this, and I get the questions. And you've made them before. You've made them clear on this show before.
I didn't know. I did not make them before.
No, this stuff about the dossier and it being bogus and paid for by Clinton and it's the basis of everything, that's been made many times on this show.
I did not know that they knew about that from day one. They lied about that. They concealed that. I did not know that the Strzok and Page texts have been eliminated.
What you do know is that the Inspector General looked at them, they had a chance to review the texts, and it was found by an independent body, actually two, who took a look at it, that they didn't believe there was animus that affected the work.
Well, that's totally ridiculous. When somebody says, I hate somebody, that's totally ridiculous. When somebody says, I hate that person, as a prosecutor, I'm not putting him in charge of that investigation.
I hear
that is sick.
Let's deal with the issues today.
Sick, totally biased statement.
The argument has been made.
You tell me you would like to be investigated by somebody who hates you?
I wouldn't want to be investigated by anybody, and it was the right move to remove them.
Do you think it's fair to have somebody investigating the President of the United States who has expressed opinions hating him only after he framed Flynn? Only after he started the investigation.
And the Inspector General said that work was not John.
Only after he submitted the false affidavit.
Look at the
he
yield.
had done tremendous damage by the time they did that. The amount of false reporting about this case is despicable.
Mr. Mayor, false reporting is saying that nobody in the campaign had any contacts with Russia. False reporting is saying that there has been no suggestion of any kind of collusion between the campaign and any Russians. Because now you have Paul Manafort giving poll data that winds up leading to this coincidence.
Well, you just misstated my position. I never said there was no collusion between the campaign or between people in the campaign.
Yes, you have.
I have no idea if I have not. I said the President of the United States. There is not a single bit of evidence the President of the United States committed the only crime you could commit here, conspired with the Russians to hack the DNC.
First of all, crime is not the bar of accountability for a president. It's about what you knew, what was right and what was wrong, and what did you deceive about. Those are going to be major considerations.
The president did not.
He said nobody had any contact. Tons of people had contact. Nobody colluded. The guy running his campaign
he didn't say
was
nobody.
Working on an issue at the same time as the convention.
He said he didn't. He didn't say nobody. How would you know that nobody in your campaign?
He actually did say that, Rudy. He said nobody, and then he said, as far as I know.
He said it in a. Well, as far as he knows, that's true.
I don't know that it's true.
The president knows, and as far as I know.
How did Paul Manafort do all these things and nobody else knew?
He was only there for 6 months or 4 months.
He was there for the convention when they changed the platform.
Yeah, and he
gave the polling data, Cambridge Analytica. You don't have the same questions about them that you do about the dossier.
And they ended up, how about reporting this? And they ended up with a stronger platform on Ukraine than they started with by the time they were finished.
They wanted to put in there that we would give lethal help with lethal weaponry, and they changed it to soften it to say.
And they took it out, and then they put back in that they were going to give substantial help to Ukraine.
Right, but not the same.
Which was not in the Democratic platform, by the way.
It was softened. Who did it?
Which was not
and why
in the Democratic
they did it,
platform.
we don't yet know.
And the president had no knowledge of that. I happen to know that.
He didn't know about his own party's platform.
Chris, come on. You've been around politics to know candidates don't know a damn thing about the platform. They don't pay any attention to the platform.
I was raised by a guy who would have corrected the punctuation in the party platform.
Maybe was different. But I've been with a lot of presidents and a lot of presidential campaigns. And the platform, they pay no attention to. They care about their acceptance speech. That's what they're spending their time on.
Fine,
they
but be that as it may, there are two
speeches
coincidences to answer for. The first one is Manafort is viable at the head of the campaign when that's going on. Then he's viable at the head of the campaign, giving polling data that winds up having the same faces and places targeted by the campaign that are targeted by Russian trolls. How is that not collusion?
It's not collusion.
How is it not?
Well, because polling data is given to everybody. I mean, you shouldn't have given it to them. It's wrong to give it to them.
It's not given to everybody.
And I can't speak for Paul Manafort. Of course it is. First of all, the most inappropriate, the most inaccurate stuff is internal polling data. All of it is cooked to make the candidate feel good.
They wound up coming to the same conclusions about whom to target and where. If you give people who are trying to interfere in an election information about where to target and whom, you don't see that as collusion.
Not with the President of the United States, not with Donald Trump. Donald Trump wasn't giving polling data.
At a minimum with his campaign, and the question becomes, what did the president know?
He and I didn't know about that until...
I'm not saying you did. I'm asking about the president.
He didn't. He did not know about it until it was revealed a few weeks ago in an article. I still haven't seen the testimony. I've seen the article, which is based on leaks.
Question.
So I don't know what was actually said, what was actually done.
Question.
At this point, I have no real solid knowledge anything like that was done. All I have is what was leaked to a newspaper, probably unethically leaked to the newspaper. Like that counterintelligence report was leaked to the newspaper, and the reporters never bothered to ask if they started a counterintelligence. If they started an investigation, a counterintelligence investigation, a year and a half ago, don't you think as a reporter you would ask what was the conclusion of that investigation?
No, they handed it off to Mueller.
No, they didn't. You can't hand off a counterintelligence national security investigation to a prosecutor. Absolutely not. That means you found no. Chris, I worked for the Justice Department for 18 years.
I know you did. I'm not telling you don't know the protocols. I'm saying that was
Let me explain.
Go ahead.
Let me explain to your audience the truth about that.
Please.
The truth about it is that if you're doing a counterintelligence investigation and you find any evidence of breach of national security, you got to follow up on it. You can't refer it to a prosecutor because you have to quickly report that to people in authority so that they can protect America against a national security breach. They found no such breach.
All right,
None.
Look, I take your opinion.
None.
I take your opinion.
The New York Times left the innuendo. The New York Times left the innuendo that they might have because they didn't report that that investigation found nothing.
All right, and I take your opinion on that.
And that's
the
the kind of stuff.
We'll
that's the kind of stuff they're doing to this president.
All right, well, let's. I have two more questions, okay, and then I'll let you go. First one is that
I can stay all night.
I know, but I have to take commercials, and I don't want to hold you over a break. It's very weird to do that. So the idea of transparency, everybody should be on the same page.
Yes,
Whatever does not compromise national security, and that should be a very tight definition, should be made public. All the findings that the people can see from Mueller. Do you agree?
I agree.
You have been quoted as saying you should get to go through it first. Is that a fair assessment of your position?
Of course I should. I should be allowed to respond.
Should you be able to change the report?
I've been misquoted about it also.
How so?
I said, because I don't want to change the report.
Okay.
I want to respond to the report.
Okay.
Wouldn't you want to respond to the report if it was about you? And don't you think it's fair that we get an opportunity to do that?
Absolutely.
I have no control over what Mueller's going to say. Let him say whatever he wants. I have no control over what's national security, what isn't. The government's got to decide that. As his lawyer, I'd honestly like you to see the whole report.
Me too.
Because I think Jay and I can knock the hell out of it.
Well, look,
because
and you should have that opportunity. I'm just saying
illegitimate.
Nobody should change the report itself.
Of course not.
Before the people get to see it, and you agree with that on the record.
Of course, yeah, and to have one of those senators yesterday suggest that is totally ridiculous. First of all, they wouldn't let me change the report. Secondly, I've been a lawyer too long to think I'd ever do that. And third, I want them to write the garbage they're going to write because I want to answer it, unless they surprise me and they do a fair report, which I'm hoping to God they do.
Look, and you heard what Mr. Barr said yesterday, right, about Bob Mueller, right?
I heard what he said about Bob Mueller.
Imagine him doing anything that would justify removing him or improper conduct. Do you agree with that about Bob Mueller?
No, I would not say I can't imagine. I would say that the president has not removed him. And this whole idea of obstruction is really stupid because the investigation has come to an end and nobody's obstructed it.
I don't think the investigation's come to an end. Look how much was redacted in those Manafort papers.
If it hasn't come to an end, it's certainly come to an end on collusion. They either have it or they don't have it.
How do you know? We just learned the Manafort stuff, and it's the most damning stuff to date.
That's not collusion and hacking the DNC.
But that's not the bar. Were you doing something inappropriate? No. Look at the mandate for the special counsel, Rudy. It doesn't say crimes. It says contact. It says coordination. It's not just crimes. The American
of course they're
people, because the
investigating
bar
crime.
of proper
The
conduct in
Justice
government isn't a
Department-
felony.
The Justice Department doesn't do ethics investigations.
A special counsel can. It can
No.
be part of their mandate, and you know that. It's right in
They're
Section
doing
600.
a criminal investigation, and if it leading to impeachment, it has to be a high crime or misdemeanor.
That's true.
Not an unethical violation.
That is a political
Look, they have
standard.
gotten so beyond their scope that it's absurd.
How has he gotten beyond his
Ethics
scope?
and ethics. How has he gone beyond his scope?
Yeah.
At least four degrees of separation. He begins with collusion. He goes to a completely phony obstruction investigation, which Barr
How
has
is it
written.
phony with all of the things that the president has done with respect to this investigation?
Because
if you
he
were at the
didn't obstruct-
DOJ, Rudy, and you watched the president doing these kinds of conversations with Comey, asking people to leave, asking for loyalty,
Every right
asking
to
to
do
go
that.
easy on Flynn.
Every
and then
right
he
to do
says,
that.
then he brings in Rosenstein. They write up a memo about why he's got to go. The president says include Russia. He says no. He gets upset. They get rid of Comey. He then says it was about Russia. If you were hearing those kinds of things at the DOJ, you wouldn't say, what the hell is this guy doing?
And
Why
then
is he doing all this?
Then I would calm down, I'd read the law, and I'd find out that Article 2 of the Constitution of the United States, which I took an oath to uphold, which apparently Mueller's people have forgotten, gives the president the authority to fire people.
Not for any reason.
Well, for any reason, but a criminal reason. It'd have to be like something like obstruction is not based on something like, oh, please go easy on Flynn, which he never said, by the way. He disputes saying that, but let's just say he said it.
But Mr.
I did
Mayor, how
obstruction
can
cases.
we take his word
Here's what obstruction
as
cases
dispositive
are. Well,
on
let's
the
say he
issue?
said it. Let's say he said,
Okay.
please, Mr. Comey, go easy on the poor general. Look, when I was a prosecutor, that must have happened at least 100 times. It is not obstruction.
Not by somebody who could take you out.
Oh, absolutely.
Who?
Absolutely. I'm not going to tell you who. They're all privileged conversations. But the fact is, obstruction is something like this. Every case I ever saw, I'm going to break your legs. I'm going to take your money away. I'm going to hurt your family. That's what obstruction is. It isn't giving your opinion when
Rudy,
you're the boss.
I hear you about the basic law, but again, adding to the circumstances, he keeps meeting with Putin. He takes the interpreter's notes. He
Who?
won't talk to
He met with Putin twice.
The president. No, he's met with him several times, and their
Well, we had two
conversations.
real meetings with him. The summit meeting was the only real big meeting.
But he's on the phone with him. He's meeting
Not
with
really.
him.
Not really. He's not on the phone with
But
Putin.
several times where he hasn't talked to his staff about what happened. He took an interpreter's notes. They don't want to impart what was in the
Well,
conversation.
that's up to the president. I mean, president has to conduct our business with some degree of confidentiality. You can't take notes on everything.
In this context, the interpreter takes notes and you say, give me those? Don't talk to anybody about this?
If the collusion happened, it happened a long time ago. It's either provable or it's not. It is not provable because it never happened.
What do you mean if it happened? I thought you used to say there was absolutely no chance it happened.
I'm telling you there's no chance it happened with the president
How do you
of the United
explain
States.
Manafort? But it's his campaign, Rudy. Doesn't that matter?
I have no idea, never have, what other people were doing.
But he ran his campaign. It's not like the guy who he met at the shoe shine shop.
He also may have had an agenda of his own. Didn't these guys owe him a lot of money?
But who else knew what he was doing? He didn't change a party platform by himself. He didn't get
change
polling
the party
data by
platform.
himself.
By the way, Manafort wasn't involved in that either, by the way. Go talk to the people who were
What
involved
a coincidence. They changed the party platform in the same way that the Russians wanted.
Well, whatever. The president didn't know about it. It was changed back to a very acceptable position.
It was
a stronger
softened.
position than present government policy. Absolutely not. Much stronger than the Obama
And now they're
position.
trying to relieve
And
sanctions
Trump has
on one
been
of the guys who
harder-
are being looked at in the probe.
And Trump has been harder with sanctions on Russia than Obama was.
Congress forced his hand, and now they're trying to relieve sanctions on one of the guys
Congress
that Mueller's
did not
looking at.
force his hand.
Why would you do that?
He recommended the sanctions originally. And by the way, you can't let foreign policy and the conduct of foreign policy get hobbled by this unfair witch hunt. I mean, that's one of the reasons that this should come to a conclusion. And don't you think it'd be fair, whether you think he's concluded or not, that Mueller finally be asked, show us what you got, put up or shut up? You and your witch hunt guys.
But he's never denied us that access. It concludes, he puts out the report, and then we see what it has.
Well, let's get it now.
I've always seen this as a false argument, the idea of he's not showing us what he has.
Well,
it's not over.
Well, let's do it.
But he's got to finish.
It's over enough. We've answered all the questions on collusion.
What does that mean, over enough?
How much longer are you going to let him do this?
He just put out that your campaign chairman was playing with the Russians.
But we don't. That isn't what he's. We don't need a special counsel to investigate a campaign chairman. We have him because the president of the United States is involved.
You do when the president of the United States seems to be a
led
little
him
hyperactive about the probe, and it may not be fair. And the guy who was at the head of the AG at the time was his campaign
about the
guy.
probe because I think it's the most inappropriate investigation I've ever seen, conducted on an ethical level that's disgusting, and allowed to do so because you have a compliant press that loves the idea that Manafort's house was invaded, that Manafort's in solitary confinement.
I don't love any of that.
Well,
I just
a
want
lot
the
of them
truth.
do. They don't. Who complains about the man being in solitary confinement? God, if he was a terrorist, they'd complain about it.
You shouldn't have messed with the witnesses,
unbelievable.
You were harsh with people who messed with you that way when you were a prosecutor.
He didn't threaten
you
to
weren't
kill
nice
anybody.
to perps.
I don't think I've ever put a white collar guy.
I
do not. I sure did, and they went to jail for 3 years or 4 years. I didn't put them in solitary confinement.
So you could be tough too when guys messed with you. That's what's going on here.
I did not put them in solitary confinement the way Manafort
You would if you
has been
wanted
in
to keep them from communicating with people, if they were tampering.
I would tape record them if I wanted to keep them from communicating. And by the way, in prison, everything is tape recorded. Every phone call is tape recorded.
Still managed to do it.
Except with your lawyer.
All right.
Except with, he didn't do it. No, he didn't do it while he was in prison. He did it when he was outside. That's why they put him in prison, even though they could have taped him. They could have put a monitor on him. That's what's usually done by fair prosecutors, not by Andrew Weissman, who several times has been caught doing this to other people and been upbraided by courts. And Mueller went and hired him, an act of supreme bad judgment.
The prosecutors are not bad guys when you're looking at the context
Go
of
look
Paul
at Weissman's record, my friend.
But look, to me, but Rudy, I always want to stick with the facts in front of my face in these circumstances. I don't judge people by their past. It's what you did here. It's what's going on here. But I appreciate
what's going on here is an investigation that should be reported on now. It's gone far enough. Let's see if he's got anything. I challenge him to show us some evidence that the president was involved in anything approaching criminal conduct. No. So end of view. You want to do an ethics investigation? Fine. Do an ethics investigation. But you don't need a special prosecutor for that.
I hear what you're saying. Your arguments are on the record and before the audience. And Rudy Giuliani, I appreciate you taking the time and laying it out. This is very helpful to the audience. God bless and be well.
And thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Rudy Giuliani, ladies and gentlemen. So that is one big story.
Hi, everyone. My name's Mike. I'm the creator of Mox News. And for the last 15 years, I have been telling you that as long as I have the support of the community that I serve, Mox News will post videos forever. And that's the truth. As long as I have your support, no one could ever make me stop. Unfortunately, currently, less than 1/2 of 1/10 of 1% of Mox News viewers ever donate, tip, or contribute anything back. Again, let me make that really clear. Much less than 1/2 of 1/10 of 1% ever give anything back. And to those of you who have donated to Mox News, I want to thank you so much, because it's because of your generosity that we have been able to bring attention to important videos that millions and millions of eyes would have never seen. And I think that that's an amazing thing that we've been able to make happen together. And I can't thank you enough for helping me make that happen. So it's not too late. If you'd like to see Mox News covering the 2020 presidential election, if you can't imagine the 2020 presidential election without Mox News, please, there's still time. You can make a difference. It's easy to make a contribution, donation, or tip. You can go to moxnews.com, or in the text body of this video, there are clickable links to the Patreon page or to the PayPal page. And again, it should take less than 2 minutes to make a donation, and your donation can make a big difference. So I thank you all. Stay cool. One of these days this war is going to end, and it would be awesome if Mox News could be there to celebrate that day with you.